Welcome to Speak of the Devils, the premier podcast for Sun Devil football. I'm Brad Denny with 3TV.
And I'm Joe Healy with devilsdigest.com.
All right, Joe, the portal entry window is just about closed, but that just means that the action is fast, furious, and ongoing as the Devils, since we last joined you, have picked up another several commits as well. But we figure, with just getting near the end of that open window, it might be time to take a step back, take a deep breath, and take a real deep dive into some of the big names that ASU has signed so far.
Yeah, I think closure is an important word here this week. The transfer portal window will be closing out this Friday. Now, naturally, as we know, you tend to see some entries trickle into the days thereafter. I think schools have a certain period of time to process that. So even if that may go into next week where you see the announcements that were submitted before the deadline. Also, of course, Sun Devil fans got a bit of closure earlier this week with the news of one particular transfer player finally ending his world tour of visits and selecting a school, just to put a bow on that matter. But yes, as it seems, ASU's transfer class might be generally put together with a few odds and ends. Sun Devils have done a ton of work in the portal, as we've broken down in previous shows, as we'll do today, as we'll do moving forward. So needless to say, quite a bit to talk about.
Yeah, and we'll be bringing in our old friend Cole Topham. Nobody really breaks down the X's and O's schematically like Cole, so he's going to give a rundown of some of the big names on the offensive side of the ball that ASU has brought in over this cycle. We'll also be talking at the end of the show with a new running back, Marquis Gillis, who has a great story of his own. But Joe, before we dive in all of that, and of course, we'll take maybe a more comprehensive 30,000-foot view of the class as a whole in next week's episode. But since we last joined you, there have been several new additions before we jump in with Cole. A couple junior college additions on the defensive line, obviously an area of need for the Sun Devils. First up, Hiram Aveono, coming over from Butler Community College, 6'3", 285 pounder, 4 years of eligibility remaining. And then he's also joined by a little bit more season of a player in Jeffrey Manns, coming over from Hutchinson Community College. He played 2 years there of JUCO ball. He's 6'3", 300. He had 4 sacks and 7.5 TFLs last year. He played at the same high school as current ASU running back Kyson Brown, but 2 big additions on that D-line.
Now, before we break down those new additions, got to step back a moment and go through some very important breaking news here on today's episode. Here we are on Wednesday, January the 14th. We got to wish a big happy birthday to you, Brad. Appreciate everything that you do. You are the man. You bust your tail 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to make this thing go around and give the best coverage out there. So hopefully everybody listening and watching, shoot Brad a message, a big time happy birthday. Great day for America. Appreciate you, my brother. Now then, talking about these JUCO prospects. Those are some big guys, literally and figuratively. I'm kind of settling into what I think about that, because the world is different in recruiting and player personnel these days, to where, what sort of emphasis do you place on or major college transfers, 4-year college transfers versus JUCOs versus high school players? Is the fact that ASU is putting a lot of work at the JUCO level on the interior line, concerning about the ability to get transfer players at those positions? Are these diamonds in the rough? I mean, time will tell on these. Seems like the JUCO players, for the most part, some of them of recent classes have been more multi-year projects, maybe ones that aren't necessarily entered into the fold immediately. So again, we'll see how these guys factor out. It's great for them to have the eligibility that they do. They've got the size that they do. So, it kind of remains to be seen how this will, work itself out. But again, you lose, guys like Jacob Kungaika on the interior of the defensive line. You get CJ Fight back. You hope to get a healthy Zach Swanson back, a veteran like, Blazin Lono Wong back, and some others there. So that is the interior of the defensive line is a position that, I'm a little curious about, why there weren't or haven't been, 4-year college transfers. But if they get the guys they need to the JUCO level, then that does it right there.
All right, so let's now look at ASU's transfer portal additions, because those 2 guys are going to be counting as kind of just the traditional high school / JUCO 2026 signings. These are the new portal entries since we last joined you on Friday, and there were several because ASU, of course, very, very active. They began with a couple of tight ends, one coming over from Tulane, and Anthony Miller. He has 2 years left, a 6'5", 265 pounder. 5 catches, 60 yards a season ago. He projects perhaps more as a guy to really help with that physicality and that size in the trenches. They complemented him with another FCS signing from Portland State, Christian Ingman, 6'5", 235 pounder, 23 catches, 342 yards, and he was an honorable mention All Big Sky performer a season ago. He has 2 years left.
Yeah, a guy like Anthony Miller, you wonder if he can kind of slide into that Cam Harpole role. Harpole was obviously, very improved player from 2024 to 2025. But, it's a presence that will be missed. So he might be able to, put into that role. And obviously, Shimon Matera was a very versatile tight end, could block like crazy in addition to being a very good pass catcher. Really eager to see how things shake out at tight end. That was a position group, of course, that I had a great deal of confidence in entering the season. And there were some players that kind of achieved their potential. There were some that may not have done quite as much as expected, but you go into 2026, with some high upside guys like AJ Ia, like Kamari Anderson still on the roster, but you get these and you get a bunch of folks in there in addition to the 2026 class signees and things like that. So quite a few names at tight end. And obviously we know that ASU likes to use quite a few of them. So if you get a guy that can block, and if you get a guy that has the ability to be a pass catcher and stand out a bit at the FCS level, then those are, solid acquisitions to enter the depth chart at this position.
ASU then made an addition along the offensive line, and that's something that perhaps they address more from the junior college ranks in the 26 class, but they got a veteran in Luke Baklenko from Oklahoma. Just 1 year left, but he's a 6'6", 313-pound player. Started his career at Stanford, made 5 starts at left tackle in 23, in which he did not allow a quarterback hurry, and then 9 starts at right tackle in 2024 before making the move to Oklahoma, where he saw some scant time, about 150 overall snaps that year. So he should be jumping into that tackle battle during camp.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see what ASU does at offensive tackle because, they got some few options. As we saw in the bowl game, you've got some, whether you consider them youngsters or just players that have been more in reserve roles like a Jalen Clem, and of course, James Westbrook. And, you've got 2 incoming JUCO offensive tackles that were all Americans at the JUCO level, players that were highly regarded by recruiting services, and then you have this ad as well. Obviously, it's very good to have depth of position. We've seen in recent years how ASU will run, cycle through a few offensive tackles on a regular basis. Think back to like Emmett Boley being that swing guy for the Devils. So again, really eager to see how this sorts out in the spring. And will it be the incumbent players that are taking on those roles? Will it be the new additions? It's good that they're getting some depth there because you have to replace, both those starting positions between Maxi Hanitor moving on to the next level, Josh Atkins now moving on, I believe, to Missouri through the transfer portal. So, again, it's good to get a guy with some starting experience. And at this point, just with how the transfer portal works is I'm okay with these 1 year guys because it's really just becoming a year after year after year reload across the board, across the country. So though it's great to have guys that have a minimum of 2 years left, that is, the preference, I'm kind of softening my stance on the 1 year guys because once again, the nature of the beast right now is you're just entering every year free agency. So if you got to get a lot of guys, 20 plus every year, that's kind of standard.
Especially with so many outgoing guys to the NFL and expiring eligibility from this 2025 group of Sun Devils. A lot of youngsters there, so a lot of these 1 year guys can help serve as those bridge prospects as those younger guys get up and ready. And then the final 4 prospects came at 2 positions. ASU brought in a pair of safeties. First, Josiah McGrew coming over from FIU. He's a youngster and was an all Conference USA all freshman team pick last year, as well as a overall all CUSA second team selection after he made 68 tackles, picked off 4 passes, and broke up 9 passes. And then the ASU wasn't done at that position. Antoine Belgrave Shorter is coming over from Penn State. He is going to be a redshirt sophomore in 2026, stands at 6 foot, 198 pounds, and made 3 starts as a redshirt freshman, making 14 tackles.
Man, McGrew is one that really caught my attention when he committed as just a freshman. As you mentioned, 67 tackles. He forced 2 fumbles, picked off 4 passes. That's like 6 turnovers that he caused on his own. Broke up some passes too. This is a guy that as a freshman doing that, I don't care where you're playing. This is an FBS program. That's some noise that he's making. I know some folks on message boards and whatnot are kind of angling him as maybe in a reserve role, but man, this looks like a guy that's qualified to come in and start. So that's an impressive one as well. And then, to get a transfer from Penn State, that's a good thing here. I put it on the Twitter machine. But we got transferred from Penn State, where both my parents went. We got transferred from NAU, where my sister went, and obviously the Arizona State University where I met. So the Healy immediate family is represented on the 2026 roster with transfers and all their college alma maters. So Belgrave Shorter, that's another solid pickup as well. So again, though ASU loses some, key pieces in the form of like Xavier Alford and others like Breedlove that played a lot, you're getting some bodies in there. I know there's a lot of discussion on who's going to fill the nickel position. Is there a guy on the roster that's fully qualified to do so? So we'll see how spring ball shakes that position out.
All right, and the last two came at the edge position. Of course, ASU loses the entire two deep there with all the veterans heading off to hopefully play on Sundays. ASU got commitments and signings from Omarion Winston coming over from Baylor. That's a name that should be pretty familiar to ASU fans. The Devils were on him on the recruiting trail. He played 3 years up at Oregon before moving over to Baylor last year, where he collected 3 sacks, 5.5 for loss. Just 1 year left as a redshirt senior, 6'5", 247. And then most recently, very intriguing signing, Jalen Thompson coming over from Michigan State. Again, just 1 year left. But during his time with the Spartans, he was coached by current ASU D-line coach Dyron Reynolds, 6'3", 260 pounds, made 26 starts at Michigan State. So some Big Ten trench experience there. Last year, 6.5 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks.
Yeah, I mean, on the surface, it seems logical to think that this pairing of Winston and Thompson could be, your starting edge defenders for 2026 based on the, numerous players that ASU loses. You do get pretty high profile JUCO transfer at the position as well to, keep some depth going there. But these guys bring starting experience. They have been able to contribute at the FBS at the, the power conference level. So that's something where you hope that they can continue to take some steps forward. Obviously, you're replacing not only Prince Door, but Clayton Smith, also Justin Watley as well. A guy like Anthony Cooper, Elijah O'Neal, these are ones that at various positions along the defensive line that you need to reload there. So you get some veteran players that are able to, help with that again, even if they're 1 year players at this spot. I think, again, I'll reiterate that taking 1 year players to me is not the end of the world, especially in the circumstance that ASU is in, where you really need to be able to win to a fair degree in 2026 to keep the trajectory going. And if you can get a solid player, if he's a 1 year guy, that's worth it to me.
All right, so we will take a much deeper and more comprehensive look at the entire roster now that the class is pretty much taken shape. There, as of the time of this recording, and depending on when you're listening, there might be another name or two that's added to that transfer portal haul. But we'll certainly be taking a more in-depth dive next week. But right now, let's bring in our friend Cole Topham to get some real X's and O's look at Cutter Boley and some of those new offensive weapons. All right, it has been much too long since we've had our next guest on the program. He knows ball like no other. We'll all pretty much be working for him at one point in the future because his career trajectory continues to be on a rocket ship. And perhaps most importantly, this increases his lead on the Speak of the Devils all-time appearance leaderboard over Jack Loader by 1. Cole Topham, welcome back to the show. How are you tonight?
I'm great. Thanks for having me, Brad. And yeah, like you just pointed out, that leaderboard, like I'm coming for it. Might even come for the top spot. Like you need to get me on here more often. Like really, I'm not even thinking about Jack Loader anymore. I'm thinking of Big H, Ho Rubino. Like that. That's who I'm really after.
Okay, I think you're only about like 90 and change away. So yeah, and there's plenty of time as we enter into season 16 of the show. But of course, you've been doing some tape analysis of ASU's transfer portal edition, some of the key names that we'll dive into here in a second. Of course, the portal window and the cycle continues to be wild in a word. But before we dive into some of the particulars, just kind of taken at a 30,000-foot view at this point, how do you kind of view the acquisitions ASU's made so far on a kind of overarching scale?
I really like him for the most part. I think they went into the transfer portal with a plan and with intention. They're like, you can see the intention behind all their signings, whether it was they were evaluating the attrition that they were naturally going to get with players hopping in the portal for money, a change of scenery, or maybe going down a level. They weren't getting the playing time that they wanted. It really seemed like ASU has attacked this transfer portal just segment with a plan and really gone after prospects and competed for prospects successfully that they believe in would be a great fit for their program. And so far I think they've done a good job. Obviously it's not over yet. They still have some visits lined up and some prospects they need to close on. But I think very early on, when you started seeing commitments like pretty early in the cycle. Like it wasn't waiting, like they were waiting for all these guys to sign. Like they got him on campus, were able to close the deal pretty fast without any of those guys taking other visits. And I think that's a really strong indicator of this coaching staff and their genuineness and their ability to really, convince those portal players that Arizona State is a spot to be at, and a spot to develop under, some pretty, great coaches on staff there.
You had a great piece really breaking down ASU's, early. I think might have been the first guy on board, quarterback Cutter Boley coming over from Kentucky. ASU really jumped on him early, and it doesn't, kind of was more direct, with perhaps, some other quarterback related portal drama that's been going on out there over the last 10 days or so. What do you think made Boley the guy for ASU to target so early and so aggressively, and some of the positives that really jumped out to you during your film study?
Yeah, I mean, I think for like right off the bat, and this is what I hit on in my film study, was Arizona State had way too many drives last season where it didn't seem like they were playing on schedule. They got behind the sticks like pretty early on. And the greatest fear in my mind with offensive coordinator Marcus Arroyo and Kenny Dillingham is them getting boxed in to a dimensional game plan. And that's why they really leaned in to Jeff Sims when they ran the football, is because they didn't want to be seen as a run first team and as a team where with your top option at quarterback out, for the season, and your top wide receiver dealing with a nagging injury. They didn't want teams to just load the box and be able to stop the run pretty quickly. And so I think that's what Cutter Boley does really well, is now ASU, can operate with more of a quick game standpoint in their offense, get the ball out fast, get the ball to, these new transfer portal receivers that you brought in, Omarion Miller and Reed Harris, who, are really two, unique, genuine talents in their own right, and keep the offense ahead of the sticks and on schedule, and put together drives where you're consistently seeing shots, at the red zone and being able to generate explosive plays. That's really what I like about Cutter Boley, is 65.8% completion percentage, the highest for a freshman in Kentucky history. And that's not an accident, because Kentucky could not run the ball last season. And so they leaned all the way into Cutter Boley and what he could do with his arm. And I think that's the most encouraging sign of this all, is people will look at all those interceptions and how, that's it. He threw just as many as touchdowns, but Cutter Boley didn't have a run game, behind him at Kentucky to really help him out. Like Arizona State has had basically 6 straight seasons with an 1,000-yard rusher, under Sean Aguano, and that's really, been a strength of the team, ever since I started covering Arizona State all the way back in 2019. So I think Cutter Boley will do just fine. And I think there's a reason why ASU hopped on him early too, is because they knew they had transfer portal talent at wide receiver coming to campus, and they wanted to make sure, that they knew who would be throwing them the football.
Although you kind of touched on it there, on the flip side, the turnovers, a lot of ASU fans see that interception number and, maybe a little PTSD from kind of some of the high turnover games near the end of this past season. How much of a red flag is that turnover issue? What kind of jumped out, maybe some of the causes there in your study, and what are some of the things that perhaps Cutter and the coaching staff can do to mitigate that?
Yeah, I think it comes down to 3 things, right? It's one, him being a redshirt freshman, and still gaining that experience at the position, and realizing, which windows he can't fit the ball into. And I didn't really see a ton of, I completely misread the coverage and I got picked off because the guy read my eyes. I saw more of like Kentucky really trying to overcompensate for the lack of a run game, them running a ton of their staple quick game concepts. And by the time the 4th or 5th time that you've run it in the game, the defense is keying on it because they know it's all you can run. And all of a sudden, he's the linebacker or the cornerback has read the play and is breaking on the football before the receiver is, and he's taking it the other way. That's what I saw from Cutter Boley's film, really. And then the third is just negative game scripts that Kentucky was in. Like, you're going to be forced to pass the football more when you're down in games, and Kentucky was losing in a lot of games this season, last fall. And so hopefully, ASU is going to be, more competitive or be protecting leads this next season, which I think will really help protect Cutter Boley's stats a little bit and make that interception total go down. But I didn't really see anything that was like a super head scratching decision where it was just clear he wasn't reading the field. It was more just, a young quarterback doing the best that he can, despite, the overall lack of talent around him.
The quarterback run game has really kind of been a staple and a big part of this ASU offense in recent years. And doesn't seem like, a guy with the stature of Boley is necessarily as fleet-footed as a Sam Leavitt or even a Bo Nix. So what kind of adjustments might we see from ASU side of things, knowing that they don't have, necessarily a runner of that caliber?
Yeah, I mean, I think you lean more into the RPO game, obviously, and ASU has done that, a ton the past 2 seasons. But things you take out of the playbook are, QB draws or like quarterback counter plays, in the red zone, because I just don't think Cutter Boley is that type of athlete, dynamic one-on-one, can make a player miss in the hole. He's more of a when things break down in the pocket, extend plays, get what you can. And not to say he's not an athlete. Like, I think Boley is completely fine given his stature at 6'5". And I think he's just over 200 pounds as well. He can get things done with his legs on the ground from a play extension standpoint. And you can build that into the play structure as well with those rollouts and sprint outs that Kentucky liked to run last year as well. I think we'll see that pop up in the ASU offense. But I think, that QB run deck that you had with Jeff Sims and Sam Leavitt, you can pretty much take out entirely. I think those will be more replaced with quick screens to receivers, the RPOs, like I mentioned before, and then possibly some more Sparky formations. Almost caught myself there.
There you go.
Sparky formations with the running backs that you brought in the transfer portal, kind of like how they did it with Scat for the 2 seasons that he was here. I think you could see more of that, more trickery in the red zone to replace some of those designed quarterback runs.
How do you compare, Cutter where Cutter Boley is at right now, perhaps, where Sam Leavitt is or was rather heading into 2024? How do you make that comparison of those 2 guys as prospects? And, ultimately, what kind of ceiling do you think Boley has, should his development continue well under this coaching staff?
Yeah, I mean, I think his ceiling is probably as high as all those other quarterbacks that Kenny Dillingham has coached. I mean, everyone remembers that Sam Leavitt was a relative unknown when he transferred to Arizona State from Michigan State. I mean, he had basically a few game reps in similar situations to Cutter Boley, where Michigan State was losing very handedly, and let's see, what the freshman can do. And so basically, he didn't have a lot of game tape when he came to Arizona State, and the staff took him in and developed him and were able to get him to play, within the system for the good season that he had here. And then it kind of seemed like injuries, caught up to him this past season. And so I think, barring a healthy season from Cutter Boley, I think you can expect similar results and possibly even better results from a quarterback that wants to stay in the pocket, wants to stay on time with the offense. And like I mentioned earlier, is going to have a run game behind him. And so all those play action shots that weren't available at Kentucky are now going to be even more lethal at Arizona State. And like I keep alluding to, like the receivers that they brought in the transfer portal are the real deal. Some players that are really dynamic and have got unique skill sets to each one. And so I think ASU is going to have a ton of fun with this offense this next season. And that's another reason why Cutter Boley, like moving on Cutter Boley, was such a great decision by Dillingham and the rest of the staff, was because, I mean, this is a guy that's obviously had experience as a starter in the SEC, but isn't going to command the price tag that, you know, a DJ Lagway, you know, might command as well. So you're able to spread that wealth around to other positions and really invest in talent across the roster that you wouldn't otherwise had if you gave that chunk of money to a big time quarterback. So I really like the, I don't want to say dart throw because we have so much film on him, but chance on a young quarterback to reach his potential at Arizona State, from a roster building, you know, general manager perspective.
So before we talk about those that dynamic group of wide receivers that ASU brought in, you know, Boley wasn't the only quarterback brought in. Of course, Mikey Keene, the veteran coming in from Michigan, where he obviously didn't play, but you know, a name that ASU fans know from him leading Fresno State to that win in Tempe a couple years ago. How crucial was it though to bring a guy like Keene into the fold when you have a guy like Cutter Boley, still a youngster, a couple of young freshmen and a redshirt freshman in Cam Dyer and Jake Fetty, just having that veteran presence in that room along with the, you know, that group of talented youngsters?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you can really criticize the decision at all. Like, if for some reason Mikey Keene, you know, becomes the starter and takes reps, you know, in an Arizona State uniform, like in the game, then that's the best case scenario because it means you had a quality backup plan in place. I mean, this is a guy who balled out at Fresno State and then backed up Bryce Underwood last year at Michigan, and now, you know, is a little homecoming, you know, for him coming back to Arizona State. So I think quarterback, the staff made sure that quarterback was not going to be a position of worry for the Sun Devils this season. You know, I think that was a really good choice. We've seen a lot of teams actually invest in their quarterback rooms this offseason, not just grabbing a big name starter, but grabbing a quality backup. And you look at Ole Miss this past season, how well it worked out for them, that, you know, Trinidad Chambliss, you know, was able to lead that team to the playoff, but people forget that Austin Simmons started over him to begin the season. You see Utah and what they're doing with their NIL collective. They just locked in Devin Dampier back for another season, but they re-signed Bird Ficklin a few days prior. So that gives you like two quarterbacks of the same mold that can basically allow that offense to stay on schedule and not get out of rhythm. So I think ASU has a similar approach where they loaded the quarterback room. You know, they're obviously going to coach the hell out of the position, and whoever's under center, you know, is going to be a quality option.
All right, let's talk some wide receivers. ASU brought in a trio of talented guys, and you know, the first domino to fall there, Omarion Miller coming over from Colorado, really kind of shook off that injury-plagued season a couple years ago with a really dynamite performance. I believe second team All Big 12 performance in 2025. And ASU fans, of course, see the parallels there. The last time they went to the portal for a Colorado wide receiver turned out pretty good as well. What jumps out to you about what Miller could potentially bring to Tempe?
Yeah, I mean, really, a lot of the things that I liked about Tyson, I like with Omarion Miller. Like, he's a really fluid athlete, and there's a lot of plays on his Colorado film where whoever was playing quarterback for the Buffs, like, really couldn't miss him if they tried. Like, he was that wide open downfield on some of these touchdown catches, on some of these explosive plays. And that's not to say he's a one-trick pony either. Like, some people love to see that vertical ability from a transfer portal wide receiver, and it's definitely what made him, you know, have that such a high ranking in the portal. But I think he's very slippery after the catch. Like I said, I think ASU is going to lean more into the screen game, you know, tunnel screens, bubble screens out on the perimeter this season to kind of replace the output that they got prior with the QB run game. And he's very slippery after the catch. He's a hard guy to take down one-on-one in the open field. The one knock I have on him is I don't think he's the greatest run blocker in the world. I looked at his PFF grade. I think he had like a 48.5 grade on run plays. And so I think either Kenny Dillingham and Hines Ward, they're just going to have to reframe and completely remold his mentality, or we're going to see a lot more 12 personnel this season with the tight ends. And I definitely expect AJ Ia, to be on the field a lot more than he was as a freshman this past season. So, yeah, I mean, lots to like about Omarion Miller. He gives the offense an explosive option, and I'm sure he's going to get his targets.
And then the another big domino, both figuratively and literally, in Reed Harris coming over from Boston College. I know he's the guy you've been high on. Why should ASU fans be excited about what Harris can do teaming up with Miller?
Yeah, I mean, Big Domino is right. Like, 6'5", and he looks every bit of it on film. He's that red zone weapon that ASU was missing last season with Tyson dealing with that injury, and it just kind of seemed like the offense fell apart. Once they got inside the 20, because they'd run so many slot fades to Tyson. Obviously, he was a big weapon in the screen game as well, and so Reed Harris kind of gives you that post up player that can go snag the football, contested catch situations, and really compete, for the football and get down in the end zone. But that's not to say like he's limited to that area of his game. Like, what I really liked about Reed Harris from the film that I watched of him was the extensive catch resume that he had. I mean, if you're a receiver coach and you're watching that film, he's just ticking every single box. Like, pick your flavor: contested catches, over the shoulder, back shoulder, red zone, vertical routes, digs over the middle. Like, he caught everything. And so there was really nothing, no unanswered questions about Reed Harris, even though he played for, a program like Boston College that didn't have a lot of success this past season. It wasn't for a lack of effort from Reed Harris. Like, he put the offense on schedule, kept him on schedule, made plays for Boston College, and I think this is a really good ad by Arizona State. I think it's a move that's going to fix a lot of the issues that they dealt with this past season.
Harris and Miller were two of the more heralded and highly ranked portal wide receivers, but that might unfairly, overshadow Raiden Vines-Bright, who's coming over from a nice freshman season at Washington. Of course, a local guy, played a few seasons of ball at Corona del Sol. What is he bringing to the table, and how do you see him being used as a Sun Devil?
Yeah, like you said, he prepped at Corona del Sol, and I'm excited because I was actually supposed to coach against him his senior year, but he transferred to IMG. I think the January, before the, what was it, the 2024 season. So I remember just watching the tape, before that season started, being really impressed, by his footwork. It's easy for a receiver like him in high school, who's maybe a little bit more physically developed than the athlete across from him, to like win only with that and then leave it at that. But it was clear to me that he didn't sacrifice his technique at all. And I think the fact that he started as a freshman at Washington really shows just how ready he was to compete at the collegiate level. So I think he's going to be a strong option for that third spot. I think he's going to have to work for it and compete for it. I think the ASU staff has made very clear that job will be open, and there's a ton of weapons on the roster that will be vying for it. But I really like the idea of bringing a local kid home, especially one that you were really high on when you recruited him out of high school. And so it's a move that makes sense for all the right reasons.
So, of course, the ASU, the staff was able to bring in a very impressive, as of the time of the recording, 23 guys through the portal. But, of course, there were some departures: Sam Leavitt, Raleek Brown, maybe Javen Robinson, most notable. But when you kind of take that overarching look at, the comings and the goings, how do you feel like, this portal cycle, with just a couple days left in at least the entry window, has maybe impacted your view of ASU's chances in 2026?
I like it a lot. I think the Big 12 is going to be wide open again. It seems like it's going to be its third season where there's a lot of quality programs. It's the two conference spots, or the two spots in the conference championship is probably going to be decided by a few games and a few opponents that you have to beat on your schedule if you want to make it there. And so I think ASU has built a roster that can compete for a spot in that Big 12 championship and beyond. And so, and that starts with recognizing like where they where they fell short. I think if a few more red zone, situations go ASU's way, if they have a player that can bring down a ball, toward the back pylon, then some games look a lot different for the Sun Devils this season. So I think the passing game is going to be a lot more consistent in 2026. You know that the run game is always going to be dynamic, and have an athlete back there that can catch the football out of the backfield. But Sean Aguano is going to have his stable of horses that he can rotate in, and it's not going to be for a lack of production in the running game. That's certainly not going to be the reason why ASU doesn't make the conference championship. So I really like their chances. I think, like I said before to start the podcast, they were very intentional with who they wanted in the transfer portal. And they closed an impressive number of prospects, on campus within a day of them visiting. So, I really like the outlook on the roster and what they can do with the personnel that they're bringing in.
All right, so let's start off with the big question. Why was Arizona State the right place for you?
Arizona State's always been my dream school. Coming out of high school, I came out during like the COVID era. They were always on my dream board. One of the top schools I always wanted to attend, just based off the scenery around Arizona State and the culture. It's much more than the NIL stuff people always talk about with Pat Tillman, all these running backs that came out of Arizona State. So it was much more of the culture thing that kind of just sold me coming to Arizona State, and the weather. I'm from the East Coast, so getting away from that cold weather, it was great. So I was ready to hop on a flight and enjoy this weather and the scenery.
Are you going to be ready for the summers though here in Arizona when it's 118 every day?
Yeah, I feel like I'll enjoy it.
So walk our viewers and listeners through the recruiting process. Obviously you make the decision after the success you had at Delaware State to jump in the portal. What was the process like between you and the ASU staff?
The process was pretty easy. I just told them the type of guy I was. Um, I just told them that I'm ready to work. They fell in love with how hungry I am. Coming from FCS, I haven't always had like the resources and the best. Like everything wasn't in front of me. I had to go out and take, in a sense, on the field, and I had to do a lot of things on my own to get to where I am right now. So I feel as though they understand how hungry I am, and they know that I'm not going to take this opportunity lightly.
And of course, you make your way out to Tempe and take the visit. Once you got to meet these coaches face to face, get a sense to see the facilities up close, what were some of the things that made the biggest impressions on you?
Just the coaching staff, them accepting, them hearing me out, letting me bring my son and my grandfather out here on a fly on a command, just because they were hearing me out on how hungry I am to just for the opportunity. Like I said, Coach Aguano and Coach Dillingham, I feel as though they gave a dog a bone, which is an opportunity, and I just had to prove myself to my teammates to be accepted into this powerhouse program.
Kenny Dillingham is one of the youngest coaches in the country, but still has had a lot of success in his young career. What's it like from a player's perspective to be playing for a coach, still relatively young, but also, one who's, had such an upward trajectory of his career?
Well, it's great. I'm excited to get to work with him. I feel as though he's as hungry as just as me. So I'm just excited to get to work with my teammates and the coaching staff.
And, that includes Coach Sean Aguano, whose track record of developing extremely productive running backs is pretty special. What jumps out to you most about Coach Aguano, and what excites you about being able to work with him this season?
He preaches the same thing of where I came from with Coach Portis, the little things. You can't, it's not all about making the big plays. We talk about pass protection and little things like that to get to the next level, special teams. You can't take the little things for granted. And just being a good man on and off the field, that's what really sold me. I have a son, so it's far more than football for me. I feel that this coaching staff will help me on and off the field. If that makes sense.
You mentioned, being a father, how that's a lot of responsibility on top of all the demands of being a student athlete these days. How do you feel being a father has, maybe shaped your approach and to your football career?
It shaped my approach a lot. I don't take a lot of things for granted when it comes to this football thing, and it's all about the opportunity that it's all about the opportunity and how you present yourself to rising to the occasion. And yeah,
Of course, you mentioned, being able to kind of grow off the field as well and the culture of the program. So, what is this Arizona State football program getting in you off the field? What kind of person and character are you bringing to this program?
a leader, a hard worker. I want people to be able to look at me and know that I'm going to give them 100%. That's what they're going to get out of me each and every day while I'm on this campus and while I'm playing for Arizona State. You know, I'm just grateful to be here. I'm glad to be here.
You're the latest in a little mini run of FCS running backs making the jump to Arizona State. It was what Cam Scatterboot did, a couple of years ago. Did that maybe inform your decision and seeing that you could maybe think that you could maybe be the next Scat?
For sure, that was just the cherry on top. Kim Scatterboot coming here and making it out from the FCS. I feel as though I'm physical. We have similarities a lot, so I feel as though this was the best decision ultimately to get to the next level.
How are you preparing now for that jump up from that FCS level of football to Power Four football?
It's the same thing. I'm gonna be myself, work hard. I feel as though the resources is the biggest thing as far as FCS to Power Four.
And of course, you were learned from Clinton Portis, a guy who was pretty productive back in his day, as the running backs coach at Delaware State. What were some of the key lessons that you were able to take away from your time with Coach Portis?
Key lessons he preached was what you do off the field is what you'll probably do on the field. Whether that's taking care of your body. You have to be a professional at the end of the day. And I feel as a lot of people, young kids coming up trying to get to this level, they don't. They think that it's a game, when it comes to stuff as such. But you have to be a pro on and off the field. Whether that's taking care of your responsibilities, taking care of your body, things as such. And, he always preached you have to be a hard worker. You have to be one of the best on the team. People have to know the dedication, the work that you put in. So I feel as I'm going to fit in over at ASU just for the fact of what Coach Portis instilled in me at the time at Delaware State, which is just being a hard worker and proving to yourself, but not only your teammates and your peers around you.
For any viewers and listeners out there who might not have seen you in action or caught your game film, give them a scouting report. What kind of a skill set are you bringing to this offense?
I'm just a hard worker. I don't want to toot my own horn. I just say stay tuned and come out to see your Sun Devils put on and potentially be a contender coming up for this 2026 season.
Are there any backs, that you maybe model certain parts of your game after?
For sure. Le'Veon Bell. I'm gonna throw Coach Clint Portis in there. Watch him. Le'Veon Bell, Clint Portis. I'd say.
Those are two pretty good ones right there.
Yeah, that's it, really.
So you obviously been highly productive throughout your college career so far, and scored a lot of touchdowns. What's your favorite touchdown you've scored in college?
I like to say the first game we played against UD, and actually they called that back. The first touchdown I scored at UD, they called it back. They said the holding after we already scored, but going against that was an in-state rivalry game. There was a lot of emotion built up in that game, and I feel like I overcame a lot to get to that situation, to get to that point in my life. So it was like a coming to grace moment. It meant a lot to me. So definitely against University of Delaware.
And so, of course, ASU's offense has battled through a lot of injuries last year. Still was able to get to 8 wins. But when you look at the overall offensive scheme that Marcus Arroyo and Kenny Dillingham like to operate, what jumps out to you about the offense and how your skill set fits into it?
I love their philosophy, and how they like to attack the defenses. They like physical playmakers, and I feel as though I'm such. So I feel like confident going into this offense. Speaking the X's and O's to them, they're helping me understand the game way more, especially Coach Iguano and how he likes to read the defenses. He taught me some things with me only being here for a short amount of time, and I'm just excited to see where they take me.
When you look ahead to this 2026 season, what are the big goals that you would like to accomplish during your time here in Tempe?
My goals is for me and my teammates to be a contender and win it all.
And then ultimately, next fall when you're running through Tillman Tunnel past the Tillman statue, you're in the maroon and gold. What kind of excites you the most about playing for Arizona State?
What excites me the most is, uh, building new relationships with my teammates and the city. It's a great city around here. Like I'm seeing the atmosphere, the fans. I'm just excited to see the people around here and put my best foot forward when it comes on the field. That's going to take care of itself. But I'm just excited for my teammates, my fellow peers, the coaching staff. 'Cause I feel as though this is going to be a great year for not only me but ASU football.
And then, of course, spring ball is just a couple months away. What are the things in those 15 practices that you want to show this coaching staff?
I just want to show them that I'm a great teammate. Um, I'm not a selfish player. I uplift people around me. Not only that, yeah, I'm just a good individual all around.
And that's going to do it for this episode of Speak of the Devils. I'd like to thank our guests, Marquis Gillis and Cole Topham. Make sure you stay with us on the social media side of things. Things will continue to be fast and furious because just on Friday, the portal entry window closes, but the portal action will continue for the days and weeks to come. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at SOTD Podcast, on Instagram at Speak of the Devils, subscribe on YouTube, follow us on Facebook, and give me a follow on all things social media at BDenny29.
And you can follow me at Joe Healy 42. And of course, as always, huge shout out to our awesome sponsors for the show, of course, including the hat I'm wearing right now, Burrito Express, Cactus Sports, DevilsDigest.com, Jones Auto Group, Nice Pest Company, Sun Devil Family Charities, and More Lending, LLC branch, NMLS number 2732146, PJ Saturno, NMLS number 257912.
Once you're done supporting all of them, make sure you drop us a 5-star review on the podcast platform of your choice. And we'll be back next week. As we mentioned, we're going to take a deep look at this new ASU roster.